So, I'm a vet. Farm animals, livestock, and especially horses. That means I'm on call a lot, and yeah, I work the night shift more often than not. This one particular night, I was out on a call, and I thank God I was. But part of me also wishes I hadn't been. It wasn't a nice night. Still, I truly believe if I hadn't been there, at least two other people would be dead, maybe three, and a horse, which to me matters just as much. I was parked, watching some garbage on Netflix when my phone rang. Irene Capson. She and her husband owned the ranch out on Iron Road. And honestly, I loved the Capsons. They'd been clients of my dad's back when I was still a little girl dreaming of joining the family business. They were in their late 60s, and they only called when there was a really, really good reason. The kind of farmers who rarely needed a vet because they knew how to handle things themselves, for better or worse. This time, definitely worse. Their oldest, most beloved horse, Dapple, was on his last legs. Nothing they could do to ease his pain, so it was up to me. 40-minute drive to the Capson Ranch. Took me about an hour, though. I'm a careful driver, maybe a little paranoid, especially on country roads at night. Absolute death traps if you've ever tried it. When I finally pulled up, my Jeep immediately got stuck in the mud. Unusually, no sawdust down. Annoying, but then I noticed something else. Besides the Capson's vehicles, there was an ATV I didn't recognize. Didn't even look new. Could have been a worker's, sure, but Irene had said it would just be her and her husband. Meet them in the barn. Alarm bells. Quiet ones, but they were ringing. First thing I did, grab my heavy medical case from the back of the Jeep. Cursed again as I waded through the mud, almost lost my gumboots more than once. Headed toward the barn. Before I even got there, I could tell something was off. The door was open more than a crack, and I heard a voice inside. Not friendly at all. I found a gap in the barn slats and peeked through. What I pieced together filled me with pure dread. A younger man, holding a shotgun, had the Capsons cornered. I could hear everything. Lot of cursing, really vile, unprintable stuff. Things I'd be ashamed to say to anyone, let alone my own parents. And that's when I learned Daniel was their son. He'd come to pressure them into loaning him $30,000 for his lifestyle, mostly meth, and some lunatic plan to set up a lab with a friend. The friend was putting up most of the cash. The Capsons kept begging Daniel to see it was a scam. There would be no lab. They wouldn't be Walter and Jesse. At best, he'd blow it all on drugs. Daniel's response? Threatened to blow them away and just take whatever he could. Said he knew the safe code. Said it would destroy him to kill his own parents, but it would destroy him more not to get the money. I knew I had to step in. Sneaked away from my spy hole, slipped through the door. The kid hadn't noticed me. Neither had Irene. Unfortunately, Mr. Capson did. The look of relief on his face was impossible to miss. Flattering, sure, but it also meant Daniel saw me as a threat. He whirled around, shotgun now pointed at me. I just stammered, honestly almost peed myself. Never had a gun pointed at me before. And look, I've faced down angry bulls, been kicked by a horse, climbed a tree to avoid feral hogs. Okay, it was more like 7, but still. Operated on a tiger that started waking up mid-procedure. Calmed an angry hippo. Nothing left me as terrified as young Daniel Capson with that gun. I almost forgot why I was even there. Then I noticed his eyes flick toward Dapple in the stall nearest me. Without looking away from me, he asked his parents, "Is Dapple okay?" And I remembered, when I was a little kid and he was a teen, Dapple had been his horse, his beloved horse, back before whatever the hell happened to him happened. Over his shoulder, Irene admitted no, Dapple wasn't okay, that I'd been called to see if I could ease his suffering. Then Mr. Capson started pleading with his son, asking him, is that really what you want Dapple's last memory of you to be, his beloved boy like this? At first, I thought Daniel was too far gone, that his love for drugs outweighed everything else. Then he started crying, asked me if I could save Dapple. I lied, said yes. Told him I needed to reach into my medical bag for some equipment. Not many people know this, but some vets carry pistols as part of their kit, especially horse vets. It's often the most painless way to put a horse down, a bullet through the center of the brain. That hadn't been the plan for Dapple, but it was certainly my plan for their son.
I pulled the pistol out, aimed it at him, told him, without wavering, to drop the shotgun. Daniel was broken by then. Through tears, he said the shotgun wasn't even loaded, that he'd never shoot his parents, that I could shoot him in the head if I wanted, end his pain, as long as I promised to do everything for Dapple. I had no intention of shooting him, but I demanded he drop that gun. To all our horror, it was loaded. Single shell left over, I guess by accident. The gun hit a wooden plank, fired into the ceiling, scared everyone to death, but thank God no damage. Except it sent the other 3 horses in the barn into absolute chaos, screaming, braying, plus the Capson family wailing. They'd all collapsed and pulled each other into a reconciliatory hug. I figured I was safe, still grabbed the shotgun and tossed it outside. Then I went straight to Dapple. The rest? Dapple wasn't dying, just an infection. Old horse, but I saved him. Local cops showed up before any of us could call. Grew up with Daniel, one of his best friends. Between all of us, and not wanting to ruin Daniel's life further, we avoided charges. Condition? He had to go to rehab. And to his credit, he did. 5 years later, Daniel runs the ranch. His parents get to semi-retire. I'm his go-to vet now. Spend a lot of time there. Not romantically close, but we're becoming good friends. Sober, clean Daniel is the lovely, lively, smart kid I remember. So yeah, most terrifying night shift of my life, most terrifying moment of my life, but I can't help feeling proud. I saved a family, saved a man from addiction, and most importantly, I saved a horse. Dapple lasted a few more years, passed peacefully in his sleep, and Daniel's training Dapple Jr. now. I'll be honest, I put a little extra effort into that one. Dark story, happy ending. Wish they could all end like this.
I work at a grocery store in Detroit. Won't name it. Third shift almost exclusively, which means I barely deal with customers. Mostly stacking shelves, busy work. Doesn't sound glamorous, I know, but it pays a little while I finish my degree. Graduating with honors, actually. Weird stuff almost never happens on third shift. Some coworkers are weird, sure, but aren't we all working at night? I usually get there right at closing, after all the customers have been tossed out. No idea what happened this particular night. Maybe she was hiding in the bathroom, or tucked in a display. God knows. Anyway, short version, an elderly female customer was still in the store when it should have been just us workers. You might imagine her wandering around lost, or looking for her dead husband, or demanding to know where the pasta is. Aisle 3, by the way. Nope, she snuck through the whole store unseen, like a solid snake. None of us knew she was there for the first hour of our shift. First sign something was wrong? A foul smell from the fish department. Me and my coworker Cherry rushed over. What could make a fish suddenly go rotten? Did a tuna explode? Nothing prepared us.
The old woman had crawled inside the iced fish display, the one we were supposed to empty at some point. She was rolling around in it, tearing fish apart with her bare hands, treating them like her worst enemies. We just watched, horrified and, I guess, a little amused. She saw the octopus sitting there, some delicacy they didn't even import. People eat these things, I don't know why. Through the glass, muffled, we heard her scream, "There you are!" Then she started trying to tear into the octopus. Octopi are stretchy, hard to just rip apart with your hands, so her brilliant idea, gnaw on it with her teeth. Only problem, she wore dentures. After a few attempts biting off tentacles, she got her dentures stuck in its forehead. Someone had called the cops by then, but honestly, nobody wanted to intervene. We wanted to see what she'd do next. Unfortunately, that involved smashing her way out of the glass cabinet. Even more disgusting smell as she charged at us, and we soon realized it wasn't just fish, she'd soiled herself. Look, this might all sound funny, and frankly, it was, right up until this moment. Then she lunged at Cherry, covered in broken glass, bleeding from shards, tackled her, called her an octopus woman, accused her of inserting eels into various orifices. I think some troll grandson had shown her shock means and it just broke her brain. Cops had to tase her. She shrugged it off, guessed it was a weak blast because they thought she was just some old lady. Then she charged back to the fish counter, grabbed as much seafood as she could carry, jumped on Cherry again. Next thing, she's trying to force an entire octopus down Cherry's throat while whipping me with eel.
Sounds funny as hell, I know, but it was genuinely terrifying. The fish had broken glass in them. She was forcing broken glass down Cherry's throat, cutting her up. Here's the final kicker. The old woman wasn't a woman at all. It was an old man, a fisherman. Lost his livelihood thanks to commercial fishing in grocery stores like ours switching from local produce. He dressed as his wife because after he went bankrupt during the Great Fish Recession, she died of a heart attack. He blamed everyone he could, mostly us. Our chain had been his biggest local client. Tragic, horrifying, scary. Cherry suffered severe trachea damage, scars all over from the glass. The store kept it out of the papers. The poor, psychotic fisherman spent his remaining years in psychiatric care. I still work there, third shift, hopefully not much longer after graduation. Cherry's fine now, but we all insisted, no more imported octopi on the fish counter. Chapter 3, Story 3. Word of advice: never work at a gas station at night. Sounds dramatic, but I'd rather crawl over broken glass, work in sewers, or be Hassan Piker's dog than do that again. Maybe day shift is better, but my a-hole boss, I really want to call him a slur, but I don't want to get this demonetized, forced me to work nights. Only nights. I was 22, high school dropout, 6 months in juvie, bounced from foster family to foster family, so I guess I was lucky to find work at all. But good God, I'm pretty sure it wasn't legal to force someone to work 5 night shifts a week, every week, never rotating. A lot of things about Gary's gas and groceries weren't strictly legal, but I'm not a rat, and Gary's been in the ground nearly 20 years now. Plus, I'm with his daughter. She's got my kid on the way, so I play nice. I'm not trying to sound like a jerk. Lana, Gary's daughter, is the one baiting me to write this. I'm actually a nice guy in my personal life. I'm going to propose before our baby boy is born. What better place than a Let's Read video? Lana, you make me the happiest I've ever been. Can't wait to raise our son with you. Through the power of Joel's golden voice, will you marry me? Now let's move on quickly in case she says no. If she says yes, well, this is the first serious proposal on the channel. I hope so. Anyway, Gary was greasy, greedy, glad Lana inherited certain things from her Catholic mother rather than her father. Enough about that. We had some absolute freaking weirdos on the night shift. One guy spent a sickening amount on scratch cards. I don't think he ever won a cent. Dressed like trailer trash, too. A few times I said, "Buddy, you should cool it with the gambling. I'm genuinely concerned." You know how he responded? Hissed at me. Not a word, just hissed. After 3 times, I gave up. So that was scratch off, jack off. Then there was the 7-foot-tall man who came in at exactly 2 a.m. every day. Bought a Red Bull, a pack of Marlboro Lights, and one of those massive pickles in a plastic packet. Same 3 items every single time. Looked about 90 years old, skinny as hell. No way I was questioning him, especially not after the hissing gambler. Finally, a kid, maybe 8 tops, who came in around 5 a.m. every Tuesday and Thursday. Asked if we had X-Men trading cards. I explained every time, we don't sell trading cards of any kind. Didn't matter. He was there like clockwork, and every time I said no, he looked so upset, despondent. So one day, I went to the local comic shop and bought 6 little packs of X-Men cards. Next time the kid came in, I presented them. Surely one was the right brand, right? The kid looked at the packs, called me a very rude name, threw them back at me, and stormed out. To this day, I have no idea what I did wrong. The comic store guy said those were all the X-Men cards that existed. I never saw the kid again. Kind of a relief. I'm pretty sure someone met that kid later and he inspired the Duck song about lemonade and grapes. If you know, you know. Google it. Speaking of kids and short people, time for the creepiest story. I'm standing at the counter, minding my own business, hear this rich, deep voice demand I cook him a hot dog because the ones on the machine are overcooked and look like crap. I glance over. Fair enough. They'd been on rotation for about 3 days, knowing Gary. A fresh batch wasn't unreasonable, but I had no idea where the voice came from. He demanded I get a move on, said he didn't have all day. I leaned over the counter. That's when I saw a little person standing as close to the counter as possible without face planting. I'll admit I was thrown. He'd positioned himself somewhere clearly not visible to me. Whatever. I apologized profusely, said I had no idea he was a little person. He huffed and said calling him that was deeply offensive. So in my infinite wisdom, I apologized again and said, "I'm sorry, I meant midget." His face went red with fury. I knew I messed up. Scoured my mind, what else do small folk like to be called? This was the 80s, so the differences weren't well known. He explained he had dwarfism, so obviously I should say dwarf. Fair enough, I'll call anyone what they want. Here's the thing that riled me though. During my first time in juvie, I took a nasty acid attack to the face, permanently disfigured, blind in one eye, so I clearly wasn't intentionally ableist. But whatever. I told the dwarf I'd happily make him a new hot dog if he'd head over to the machine with me so I could cook it to perfection. And somehow that offended him even more. He started screaming in what sounded like a Shakespearean monologue about how he shouldn't have to move, it was my job, cook him a hot dog with all the trimmings, blah blah blah.
Actually, no, it was self-service. But I wasn't arguing. I said I'd go cook him the best hot dog he'd ever had. He replied it was too late now. I'd screwed everything up. Time to face the consequences. In complete shock, I watched as the little man rose to his full height of about 6 feet. At the same time, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a sawed-off shotgun. Told me if I went for the panic alarm, he'd blast a hole in my chest the size of a foot-long hot dog. You know what? Screw it. Screw Gary. I wasn't dying over a job that barely paid enough to live. I told the now 6-foot dwarf to chill, emptied the register into a bag he produced from nowhere. He gave me a cruel smile and strutted out. Almost did. Paused to unload a shotgun round into the hot dog station, blew it to pieces, left my ears ringing. Then he left. Heart pounding harder than when I'd done 4 lines of, well, never mind. I hit the panic button, called 911. Screw Gary, let the cops wake him up. Cops came, discovered a few things. 1, Gary was too cheap to buy an outdoor security camera. The one outside was fake. No footage of the fake dwarf leaving. But interior cameras worked. I saw how he tricked me, kneeling on shoes, positioned perfectly so I couldn't see his real legs. That's why he didn't want to come to the hot dog machine. Hilariously, this fake dwarf was a suspect in several local robberies. Never fired his weapon before. What got him caught? Taking the time to shoot the crap out of that hot dog oven. Traced the buckshot to the owner, busted. He'd robbed enough places that he'll probably die behind bars. What a shame. As for me, Gary chewed me out for handing over the cash instead of risking my life with the baseball bat under the counter. I quit on the spot. Got my life together. Went back to school. Graduated. Got a degree. Years later, met a woman I fell head over heels for. Imagine my shock when I found out she was Gary's daughter and hated him even more than I did. We bonded over drinks, sharing our glee that he was dead. I know I sound like an ass, but you didn't know the man. He wanted me to die rather than hand over $200 to a fake dwarf. Screw Gary. Screw the fake dwarf. I work at a lucrative field now. Life's frickin' awesome. That's why I'm writing to another awesome person. You. Let's read. Hope you enjoyed my story of a bunch of weirdos, one of whom nearly murdered me. If you didn't, well, I know people who will shove a hot dog where the sun don't shine. Have a beautiful day.
Hi, Joel. I grew up in Britain, but my parents are French. You'd never know it, though. I have the most posh London accent a French girl could have. Maybe from the school I went to, or because I left sixth form college and took time off before university to be an air hostess. Loved that job. Ended up staying in the air for 5 years. Not literally, but you get it. I left college in 1997. This story is from 1999, a couple years before everything changed with planes. Security was very different back then, a lot more lax, easier to get up to hijinks. You could still join the Mile Club without too much trouble, not that I ever did, of course. I honestly wouldn't. I shouldn't joke about that, considering this story. Or joke about anything, really. This happened on the first red-eye flight I ever worked. I'm sure everyone knows what a red-eye is, but if you don't, a night flight, usually short, where passengers sleep. You're meant to stay quiet, calm, well-behaved. I can't remember if kids were flat-out banned, but I don't recall any on the handful I worked. This was 27 years ago, so bear with me. Haven't been an air hostess for almost that long. The plane, run by some long bankrupt airline you've never heard of, was divided into two sections. Front section, closer to the cockpit, for passengers who wanted to stay quiet but not sleep. Cheaper, busier. Back of the plane, reverse of usual, was sort of first class for people who wanted or needed to sleep, filled with bed seats. I worked up front, which suited me fine. I didn't want to tiptoe around snoring businessmen. The sleeping area always smelled like farts anyway.
A red-eye typically has fewer flight attendants than a regular flight. I think there were just 3 of us. I remember I was up front, obviously, and my dear, gentle, queer friend Adam worked the sleeper section. Remember H from Steps? I don't know if Steps was big in the States, Joel. If not, Google him and put a picture on screen. Adam looked just like H from Steps, but calmer, quieter, more gentle. H always seemed to have the energy of 50 men. Google H from Steps, not his real name, Ian Watkins. Otherwise, you might get the guy from Lost Prophets, another singer who sadly shares a name. He did some really terrible things. You should do a true crime story about him one day. He got shanked in prison recently. Died. What a tragedy. Anyway, Adam was like a calm, gentle H from Steps. I promise this matters eventually. Partly because the villain of the story, we'll call him Ian, looked kind of like the Lost Prophets guy. He wasn't famous then, and we didn't know he was a criminal, so maybe I'm misremembering. I'll call him Ian anyway, because nearly every Ian I've met was a proper prick. Except my cousin Ian. He's a laugh. Back to the red-eye. Because I was working the front, most passengers ate late-night airline food. My job? Collect the trays with rubbish. I did this on autopilot, pun intended, sticking them on my trolley with a little, "Thank you, sir," "Thank you, ma'am," or "Thank you, lovely," if they were some old biddy so wrinkled they could have been a ladder. Or, how do I put this tactfully, someone very large who made it impossible to tell their gender. You had to be careful about that back then. Christ, I feel bad for air hostesses in the 2020s. I bet some sweet 20-year-old called a bearded passenger sir and got chewed out for not recognizing they were a pretty princess. Oh, Christ, I shouldn't have had those last glasses of wine before writing this. Anyway, I got my trolley full of trays to the center of the plane and started chucking plastic boxes. That's when I noticed it. A napkin with writing scrolled across the whole thing. "I know what you did on that plane." Then a crude picture of what was definitely supposed to be me, I could just tell. Only about 7 or 8 passengers had dinner, so the note couldn't have come from many people. I don't know why I cared. I hadn't done anything on any plane by that point, but the drawing was rude and insulting, and I was young, so I felt kind of threatened. It didn't take long to notice Ian, even in the dim lights. Guy about my age, slicked back hair, goatee that made him look like a proper Ranga. Kept giving me the evils, looking at me like I was dog poo on his shoe, but also sometimes like he wanted to lick it. I'm stopping that comparison because I'm creeping myself out, but you get the idea. I was disgusted. He still wanted a piece. I guess he saw me looking, started calling me over. "Hey girl, can I get a bottle of water? Got any napkins? I seem to have lost mine." And my favorite, "Hey lass, can you handle these nuts for me? I haven't had any complimentary airline peanuts yet, so can you get them?" That's word for word, I swear on the Bible. Back then, at that dodgy airline, you were taught to always smile, be as flirty as possible, take as much crap from passengers as you could tolerate. I once got chewed out for muttering perv after a passenger touched my butt and said it was an accident, so apparently I was in the wrong. After I gave Ian his nuts, he called me back 10 minutes later, said they were really salty, asked if I liked salty things. I ignored him. He laughed, said he needed another water, asked if I could be a good girl and fetch it. So I did. What I didn't realize, he got up and followed me to the middle of the plain, where we kept water and peanuts. Bathrooms were nearby, so at first I wasn't alarmed by someone behind me, but it was Ian, and he wasn't headed to the bathroom. He grabbed me, pinned me against the wall, shoved some kind of hand towel against my mouth to gag me, leaned in close, started whispering in my ear about what a terrible person I was. He didn't say it like that. He said some proper vile stuff that now, as a grandmother in my early 50s, I'd give a lad a good lick in the dick for. But back then, I was just a little wee thing, terrified, started crying immediately. Ian was cruel and callous, saying I brought this on myself, that I'd betrayed him after what I did on the last flight, asked how I could throw away 7 years of our relationship.
That's when I realized he thought I was someone else. His girlfriend or ex, also an air hostess who cheated on him on a flight. I didn't know then, but his brain was fried on alcohol, MDMA, and coke. Temporary insanity. Things escalated. He tried to force me into the bathroom, pushing the towel so deep into my throat I couldn't scream. Passengers didn't turn around, just me and Ian and a curtain separating us from the sleeper section. Best I could do was slap the wall, trying some kind of SOS. Got 2 short slaps in before he grabbed me between the legs over my skirt, squeezed in a way that made it clear he'd do worse if I kept going. Then my beloved friend H must have heard the slapping. Suddenly, I saw all 5'5" of him peeking through the curtain, and holy God, he stormed toward Ian, yanked him off me. My gentle, sweet buddy H didn't hesitate. He smashed his forehead into Ian's face. The crunch of bone sounded like a gunshot in that silent plain. Then H was yelling that a man was trying to assault his colleague, and H absolutely bodied him. Turned out he was a brown belt in Krav Maga, floored Ian in seconds, tied him up with plastic ties, even broke bones in his foot when Ian tried to kick out. Ian spent the next 3 hours hogtied in an out-of-order bathroom next to a toilet full of poop. We radioed ahead. Police were waiting at Heathrow. He was arrested immediately. After that, things changed. I became more cautious, went to therapy eventually, gained a whole new respect for H. Stayed in the job another 3 years, then left. Life moved on, but I'll never forget the terror of that night, or the man who saved me.